These are all 50mm lenses, but this one only costs 50 bucks and this one costs over 2,000. So is the cheap one bad or missing any really important features? Not really, apart from one catch that we'll get to later. So what is it then that makes this lens so much more expensive and bigger? And more importantly, do you need an expensive lens for the sorts of photography that you do? Let's find out, and at the end, I'll give you some concrete recommendations based on your style and your gear. And as always, everything I'm talking about in this video will be linked in the description if you want to learn more. Right below, a link to download one of my old zines for free, if you're interested. I've had one of these little nifty 50s in some form, basically forever. They're legendary, and a lot of photographers have a soft spot for them since they're really common to have as a first ever lens. And it's not hard to see why. This thing is teeny weeny. Sorry, this thing is perfectly adequately sized. It's light, it's cheap, and you know what? It looks good, just like you look good. And you should subscribe so that we can hang out, talk about lenses more often. I think with so many options that are so much more expensive than this lens, it's easy to lie to yourself and say, well, this one must be a bit rubbish then. It isn't. Guess what? I've shot some of my favorite photos ever on this lens, and I've never had a problem with it. In fact, my most successful photo post on Instagram of all time was entirely shot on this lens. But it isn't perfect, and since this design actually dates back to the 1980s, there's definitely some room for improvement. Sure, it does open up to f1.8, but if you do that, you lose a lot of clarity and contrast. At around an f5.6, it looks really great, and that's usually where I like to be anyway. I know this really doesn't matter, but I have such a soft spot for this era of coatings. I just think they're so pretty. It also works on every single Nikon camera I own, from film bodies like the Nikon F3 to DSLRs like the D750, right through to the latest and greatest mirrorless cameras like this Z6 III. Kind of. See, just like me leaving the lens factory, these older f-mount lenses don't have an autofocus motor hidden inside of them. That's one of the reasons that they're so small and cheap. Again, kind of like me. But it does mean that on the F to Z adapter, it's manual focus only. These older lenses actually relied on a screwdrive system where the motor lived inside the camera. It's crazy to think about, but you know, 50 bucks is 50 bucks, right? Put it this way, you could buy this lens and a used Nikon D750 and still have enough money left over to buy a MacBook Air, a remote control car, and a Snickers bar, or this lens. And I know I've been raving about this lens because I genuinely do think it's really great, but what you're saying is, so Hunter, if it's so good, why bother upgrading it? It's not like lenses have changed that much since 2002, right? Well, yeah, actually, they have, and about 20 years after that lens popped out of the factory, this one did. I guess this is kind of a modern equivalent of a nifty 50. This is the Nikkor 50mm f1.4, coming in at around $500. The first thing you'll notice is that it's bigger. That is partially because this lens does have an autofocus motor inside of it, and that autofocus motor is really fast, really accurate, and silent. Autofocus on the AFD lens sounds a little bit like a Honda Accord with the flu. And one of the benefits of this newer lens is that it has full-time manual focus override. So in autofocus, you can just grab this lens and turn the ring and manually take over. Whereas with the older lens, you have to switch to manual focus first. Obviously, the downside to this is that, well, this is a Nikon Z mount lens, and so it doesn't work on my DSLRs or my film cameras, just the Z6 III. That being said, the bigger size and massive focus ring actually improves this lens, at least for me. I just find that the ergonomics of this fit my hands so much better and is more balanced than the kind of awkward and cramped 50mm f1.8. That bigger size, by the way, is not because this lens ate too many pies, and it's also not entirely because of that autofocus motor. It's actually because of something much more important. Do you know what else is extremely important nowadays? Having a place on the internet to share your photography work. What's that? You don't get any likes on Instagram? Don't worry about it, mate. Nobody does. Build yourself a website with today's video sponsor, Framer. Framer is an all-in-one online tool for creating and publishing websites. But when I say that, I think some of you start to get a little bit nervous and sweaty. See, in the past, website builders used to fall into one of two camps. They would either be so complicated you needed an engineering degree to work them, or they would be so simple that all of their websites looked the same. That is definitively not the case anymore. Framer have somehow struck this perfect Goldilocks design experience balance. If you want to keep things simple, you could use pre-built sections, or you could browse through their massive library of templates. Or if you do want to do more, it just lets you. It's got insanely powerful analytics tools, things like A/B testing and even localization so that you can share your ideas globally. There's such a wide range of things that Framer can do, but you never ever feel lost or overwhelmed. If you've used tools like Affinity or Photoshop, for example, you can definitely use Framer. I mean, I can. I think Framer is just a really great tool for design in general. I've been using it to make mood boards for shoots that I'm planning, and it's really great for that. On top of all of that, the value of having a place online that you can control, where you can share your art the way you want to, is priceless. So sign up for Framer using the link in the video description, and while you're at it, don't forget to use the code HunterCreates for an upgrade on the house. A massive thank you to Framer and to you for supporting what I do. Now, you might think, haha, Hunter, I know this one already. It's bigger because it needs bigger glass to open up to f1.4. And yeah, that's definitely part of it. But this lens having bigger optics also means it can project a larger image circle. What? Okay, imagine you're looking through a magnifying glass. You don't have to imagine, I've put one in. Now, notice how bang in the middle, it's sharp, but as you get towards the edges, it gets more funky. Right, that's because the light at the edges is getting messed around and bullied a bit more. I'm not a physics YouTuber for a reason. The same thing happens in a lens. So when you make the magnifying glass bigger, the good, sharp, nice middle bit also gets bigger. That's how this lens can be so sharp, and this is the important bit, even wide open. Yeah, I don't know how the lens nerds figured this one out, but with older lenses like this, there's a big difference between wide open and stopped down a little bit. That loss of quality and contrast was often enough to push me away from shooting with the lens wide open, which changed the way that I shot. But with new lenses, that's just like basically not a problem anymore at all. Like, yeah, it is technically laboratory testing better in the middle of its aperture range, but even wide open, this thing is still so sharp it'll cut you if you look at it wrong. Now, as well as that, on this new, much more modern design, we've unfortunately lost the aperture ring, and we've gained this sort of aperture and also other stuff ring. It's useless because there's no clicks. So it's a gimmick. It's pretty clear to me that there is definitely an advantage to spending $10 per millimeter instead of $1 if you're on the latest Z-mount cameras, that is. So why this? Why indeed? I really wanted this lens to shock me, you know? I wanted to be blown away. I wanted to love it. No, first of all, ow! It's too heavy. And I'm saying that as the guy who used to shoot street with a gripped D750 and a 24-70 2.8. And before that, I was the guy who shot street with an RB67. It's so chunky, I was actually getting a little worried about my lens mount. Aside from that, how are the photos? They're fine. Look, here's the thing. This lens isn't designed for me or the photography that I do at the moment. It's designed for commercial work. Hunter, I hear you say, shouldn't the lens being really good for commercial work also make it really good for the artsy-fartsy work that you do? No. See, one of the things that I really love about the 51.4 and even more about the 40 f2 is character. And I don't mean Helios swirly crazy vintage character. I just mean having a little bit of a look, a little bit of something. I like lenses with modern character, like the 40, but if you're shooting commercials or high-end reproduction work, you do not want any character, like at all. Imagine that you're trying to take high-res reference photos of paintings in an art gallery, and the whole time you've got swirly corners. That's not ideal, and the same thing goes for any work that requires really heavy retouching or VFX work, like, for example, fashion and beauty. In fact, a lot of Nikon's own marketing material for this lens goes on about the high-tech coatings and how accurate the colors are, and that doesn't make this lens better, it just makes it different. As well as that, some of this extra weight is definitely justified. This thing is built like a brick house. And if I dropped it, I would be more worried about my toes than the lens. I really don't mean to upset anybody with this information, but professional photography is basically lens abuse as a sport. When I used to shoot weddings, I would swap lenses and then dump the old one in a bag, loose, with no front cap and no rear cap. No cap. So while I really do appreciate the lightness of the f1.4, I just don't think it would last quite as long if I was using it for work photography and not art photography. And that doesn't mean I'm babying it. I mean, I am a little bit because I have to send this one back when I'm finished, but it's not like I'm not leaving the house with it. Then again, this is part of my job, and so I'm probably a little bit more okay with breaking stuff than maybe you are. So, but that's not all. Gimmicks galore. We've got a control ring, yet again, useless, and a screen. It's the most useless feature I've ever seen on a lens in my life. Yeah, it's really useful for letting you know the aperture you're set to, which you could also see on this screen right next to it, or on this screen, or on this screen. I will admit, I really like the function button, even though I thought I wouldn't, and I wish that all of my lenses had one now. I set mine up so that the camera goes to single point autofocus hold, so that I can basically take over from the autofocus system and focus and recomp like old school style. And look, it is kind of fun shooting WFO at f1.2, and it's also kind of fun playing with that really clean commercial look. I think this lens takes amazing photos. But so does this one for a quarter of the price. And my wrists stay attached to my body. So yeah, expensive pro lenses are expensive and pro because they're designed for people who need lenses that can take a beating, deliver really clean, consistent, and accurate results, and also for people who probably have a line item on their invoices that says lenses. I will freely admit this. I'm a lens snob. I really like really nice lenses, and I prefer the 1.4. By a lot. But you know what? Since the f1.8 is only 50 bucks, you may as well also get one of those for a bit just to try it, right? I mean, it's not losing any more value, or at least that's how I justified it. The point is this, really, you should 100% try to go into a real shop, I know, crazy, and put these lenses on your camera and walk around the shop with them for a bit and see how they feel to carry before you order one from Amazon based on a sharpness test. And if your budget doesn't quite extend to the 500 bucks that guy commands, it's okay, don't panic, I've got you covered. Watch this video next, where I'll show you my top 5 most underrated and underpriced vintage lenses that you can adapt to any camera. Stay hydrated and create art.